Rhinelander is a small, picturesque town in Wisconsin, a state that's famous for its museums and national parks. In the 19th century, Wisconsin's lumber industry was a leading producer of pulp and paper. Today, it's a prime destination for visitors to the northern United States. Its forests and lakes are a huge draw for tourists, but one place, Rhinelander, is a star attraction. The city is located in Oneida County, where rivers, lakes, and swamps make up about 10% of the region. Summer or winter, there's always something here to satisfy every vacationer's needs. But that's not the only reason people come to Rhinelander. According to local legend, a terrifying creature stalks these swamps and forests. Not only has it been spotted by eyewitnesses for over 100 years, but one has even been captured.
I think it's out there. It's in the woods.
On one of my evening strolls nearby here, as I was walking past the swampy area, I was stopped dead in my tracks. Then it dawned on me that I'm looking at a creature that is very, very unique, if not the only one of its kind.
And there are even rumors early on that he ate human flesh.
And as a little girl, I'll tell you, I seen him. I truly believe that I've seen the Hodag.
It's black. It has horns up its back, big claws, a horn on its wrists.
We do on occasion receive complaints, concerned citizens calling in about the mysterious creature.
This object was coming closer, and here's these red eyes.
Claws rip the belly from any beast.
It was so scary.
Horns running down its back.
I mean, this was just this beast coming out of this woodshed.
I've been actually searching for the Hodag for 40 years.
And the Hodag came barreling out from the bushes, bit him in half, just like that.
According to eyewitnesses, the Hodag lives and hunts in deep, dense swamps. The habitat is so impenetrable and difficult to access, the creature has managed to avoid being captured.
There are a lot of books written about the Hodag. Most of them are somewhat historical about the Hodag and the first discovery of the Hodag, but all of them are going to have a chapter about modern sightings of the Hodag. And the Hodag has been showing up in the media in various places. There's a kids show that had a whole episode based upon the Hodag.
Eyewitness and newspaper reports describe a hideous creature with the head of a frog, the grinning face of an elephant, thick short legs set off by razor-sharp claws, dinosaur-like horns running down its back, and a long tail with spears at the end. According to people who have seen the beast, they also say its skin is either black or green. In the late 1800s, a lumberman named Gene Shepard claims to have captured one of the beasts and taken this photograph. But some say the black and white picture isn't very convincing.
In 1896, supposedly, it's been said that Gene Shepard captured the Hodag. And how did he capture it? He had a 10-foot bamboo pole. He had a huge sponge soaked in chloroform. And he managed to find out when the Hodag was in its cave and worked his way up there with that sponge and that chloroform and got the Hodag to go to sleep. Then he brought the townspeople out there, brought it back to his house and showed it for years and years, brought it around to county fairs and made money showing the Hodag.
Gene Shepard lived in Rhinelander. The climactic area, the geography, the geology of the area all lends itself to a creature such as the Hodag thriving and existing here.
He is 7 feet long. 7.5 feet long. We're reported about 12 to 1,500 pounds. So it's not something you could hide in the woods, but his camouflage has been, they say, very well.
What exactly did Gene Shepard find in the Wisconsin woods that day? No other animal has been captured since, and no one has produced any evidence of a sighting. In spite of that, a legend is born. A legend confirmed everywhere one looks in Rhinelander, on postcards, in books, even in the local museum.
There have been people who have come forward with tales that can only, in my opinion, be interpreted as sightings of the Hodag. So yes, we've had young people and we've had older people who will swear that what they heard and saw in the woods was absolutely, had to be a Hodag.
Every tourist who visits Rhinelander is encouraged to take a cruise on the Wisconsin River. Former Mayor Jerry Scheidel now captains the Wilderness Queen. From a dock in Rhinelander, he takes passengers on excursions up and down the scenic Wisconsin River. Captain Jerry recounts the natural and economic history of the region, but he also uses this opportunity to inject a bit of local intrigue, like Hodag, the legendary creature documented near the turn of the century by lumberman Gene Shepard.
Gene Shepard was the man who discovered the Hodag, and he found that in the Great McNaughton Swamp, just north of Rhinelander. Now, the Hodag was something that had never been found before.
According to Gene Shepard, he first encounters the beast in 1893 in the McNaughton Swamp just north of Rhinelander. When he gets home, he sketches the creature, and his story is immediately picked up by the local newspaper. 3 years later, he returns to the swamp with several men to try to capture the elusive creature.
It was a unique creature, and Gene Shepard decided he needed to make some money off of this creature he found, and so he started to show it at the county fairs right around the turn of the century, from 1800s to the 1900s, and he showed it there very successfully and actually made himself quite a few dollars doing it. However, Gene Shepard was a braggart, a drunkard, a womanizer, and he died broke and divorced. And he just didn't know how to handle his money.
Right up until his death in 1923, Shepard maintains he did encounter and capture a Hodag. Jerry carries on the Hodag tradition with today's paying customers, but he adds his own personal touch to the legend.
Turn it this way, Matthew. Pretty fast. And Matthew, are you from the area? Are you from here? No?
Stevens Point.
Stevens Point, huh? Do you know about the Hodag? Oh, do you like the Hodag?
Has spikes on its back.
Yeah.
Jerry isn't just fooling around when he tells his audience that the creature exists. He really believes it, because one day, just like Gene Shepard, Jerry came face to face with the monstrous creature.
Now, I mentioned back at that island that this could be the area where a Hodag would be sighted. Well, it's possible. It has water, and the Hodag does enjoy some clams and mud turtles and a few water snakes, but it likes a nice swampy area. And I have to tell you, one day I was out walking in an area that was fairly swampy. And as I'm walking through the woods, I'm enjoying the beautiful evening. Going to be an evening just like today. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the peace and quiet of the walk. And all of a sudden, I am stopped short in my tracks, like dead in my tracks, because a smell assaulted my nose. A stink that could only be described as so strong it would drive a skunk off a gut pile. I mean, it was bad. I stopped. I moved forward quietly and carefully. And upon rounding a bend, I could see this apparition coming through the woods, as it was a little bit foggy that night. And here it comes walking down the pathway. And as it gets closer, I notice that its eyes were glowing green, that its nose was flaring red. And as it appeared closer and closer, all of a sudden, with cat-like agility, it sprung upon a log right in front of me. And that's when I saw the huge, huge claws. Claws so big it could rip the belly out of the biggest beast. That's when I saw the horns running down its back, ending in a fistful of those needle-sharp points at the end of its tail. And that's when I very carefully, trying not to move at all for fear of what might happen, I reached into my top pocket and I took out my iPhone, and I commenced to take as quiet a picture as I possibly could, and then without making any sudden movements, I very carefully backed away from that critter and hightailed it out of there.
Jerry Scheidel and Jean Shepherd aren't the only ones claiming to have encountered the Hodag. One day, a young girl named Desiree French has a similar experience in the forest near Rhinelander.
I enjoy walking in the woods. It's a sense of quietness. I don't know. I like to see what all can pop out when you're just sitting there. Well, it was nice and sunny out. It was around dusky, though. I got done with supper and I didn't have any homework, so I decided to go down there and sat up in my favorite tree like I do any other time. And I saw him. He was black, very black. Lots of spikes going. He had 2 on his head and then at least 15 going down to his back and quite a few on his tail. The claws were, I don't know, probably about that big on each paw. He had about 3 of them and then one like on his back there. It was scary. I kind of froze up and then I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I know that there have been a few bears down there, so when I hopped out of the tree, I wanted to make sure that what I saw was correct, and when I went down there, it was definitely a Hodag. Flaring red nostrils, the stench was horrendous, and I knew what I saw and I ran. At night, I don't go out. I know that's when he likes to go out to hunt, so I just keep away from the swamps at night.
I wrote about the Hodag because I'm from here, because it was a way of incorporating stories that I know. I am a Hodag. My family goes back to 1890 census in Rhinelander, and a Hodag's been part of my life all my life. My parents were Hodags. They went to high school here. My grandparents. I use everything. I take the bare bones of the Hodag story and add things that could be true. We have a story about the funeral of Shorty Matusak. There's not too many stories known, true stories about what happened to some of the victims of the Hodag, but Shorty Matusak was a victim of the Hodag. He was a fireman on the train, and the train used to stop at a little town called Roosevelt on the north side of the Moon's Chain. So the red light was out, the train stopped. Shorty Matusak was the fireman. There was nobody at the station. It was a dark and foggy night. He left the train, which was his mistake. He looked to see what was going on up and down the tracks, and the Hodag came barreling out from the bushes, bit him in half, just like that. Now, the only thing about this is he had to be buried. And of course, Father Himmelsbach had to come and say, okay, we can have an open casket, but it's not often that you have the bottom of the casket open. Of course, that's all that was left to a Shorty was the bottom. So they tacked a little satin curtain at the top so you couldn't look in there. And he wore new shoes, and everybody came to the funeral of Shorty Matusak, bitten in half by the Hodag.
It's a family secret. We can't really tell much where to see the Hodag. So, some people think maybe it's a hoax, but it's a family secret. It would be like telling where your favorite blueberry patch was. You just never talk about that.
Rod Umlauf is a nature artist who has spent years painting the Rhinelander Hodag. But they aren't just products of his creative imagination. Rod has actually seen the strange creature that inspires some of his canvases.
Our family would come up to northern Wisconsin. We'd have campfires at night. We'd be camping or staying in the cabin, and My uncle, he loved to tell ghost stories. I mean, he was the type to tell us a really scary story and then take us to a cemetery and make us walk through the cemetery. So there's this noise in the woods, and this object was coming closer, and here's these red eyes. And as it got closer, it's making these noises, and it smelled bad, not like a skunk, and there's these horns out of its back, and it's making these really strange noises, and we got really scared. But we thought kind of was like, I mean, Uncle Dick is always playing these jokes, but we could tell he was not expecting this. And he picked up a rock and threw it at this creature, and you know, thinking back, I think those red eyes were just a reflection from the campfire. But that image in my mind, you know, I was, you know, pretty young, 6, 7, but that was my first experience with the Hodag. About 10 years ago, I was snowshoeing, and in the evening, I saw a group of Hodags, not close, but there's a lot of dead trees, and I was up on a hill. So I was just like, unbelievable, because, you know, I'd heard stories about the Hodag, but people would, you know, just talk about one. But here there's, you know, a group of them. And I wasn't sure whether to call it a herd of Hodags or a pack of Hodags. But that was about 10 years ago. Of course, I had to paint that.
Following that early experience, Rod has childhood nightmares about the Hodag. At first, he suspects his mind is playing tricks on him, or that his uncle staged the creature's appearance to frighten him. But his later sighting of a group of the creatures turns him into a firm believer. Most of the time, Rod illustrates the beast with green skin, but that's mainly for artistic effect. Rod says the animals he actually saw in the forest were darker, more like the creature Gene Shepherd and other witnesses claim to have observed. So what exactly did Rod see in the Rhinelander forest that winter? Being an artist, he would rather show than tell. It seems that in Rhinelander, everything revolves around the Hodag. Skeptics write it off as a hoax perpetrated over 100 years ago by lumberman Gene Shepherd. But that doesn't explain why the townspeople and tourists are so willing to believe the creature is real.
Well, what I found in all my time up here is there's really two types of people when it comes to believing in the Hodag. There are those that just want to believe. And there's absolutely no harm in that. It's fun. It's a wonderful creature to, you know, share stories about. And then the second type are the people that are just trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Well, I'm a skeptic, so I don't think there's any proof that's out there. It's all anecdotes. If you start looking at proof, if you start looking at the scientific possibility of a Hodag being there, you're not going to have that much to stand on.
If you think about it, one of the big mistakes with the Hodag, the story as far as like the reality of it, is that the story is that there was always just one Hodag. And so now, for there to still be a Hodag running around out there today, there would have to be an animal that is about 170 years old that is still out there running around.
If you were to look at just simply the scientific evidence of what it takes for a species to survive and the fact that we don't have any photos of them, you can add up things like it's a large creature, it would consume an incredible amount of calories to survive. Probably one of the most famous stories that Gene Shepherd came up with when he first was talking about the Hodag was the stench of the creature. Well, in the fall, we have hunters that are just completely filling all of the land around Rhinelander that are hunting. And although, you know, maybe a Hodag can hide under a bush, to be concealed, but if it stinks so much that you can smell it within 100 yards, you'd think sooner or later somebody would say, I smelled a hodag, I'm going to track it down, I'm going to take a picture of it. And yet I don't see any pictures, or what there are, they're staged shots.
And those same skeptics ask another question. Now that everyone owns a cell phone capable of shooting photos and video, why isn't there visual evidence of a hodag? That's precisely what Jerry Shadell has with him when he sees the creature. So where is his proof?
Alas, upon getting home, my battery was dead. While I'm searching for the charger, my cats decided to use the phone as a kickball, and they shattered it beyond belief. But I did see it. It is real. And I only had one cocktail.
You'll find some pictures that Gene Shepard himself took of the hodag, of townspeople standing around attacking the hodag and so on. But you know, it's a pretty stiff-looking creature. It seems to be taxidermically perfectly sitting there. So I'm not sure how much you really want to take this seriously.
He was the prankster. He was the father of this great prank. And so I doubt whether he would have admitted exactly that it was a hoax. But certainly there have been a number of stories that have uncovered it, you know.
The more you look into Gene Shepard, the more you're going to find that this guy loved to play pranks. He was a jokester. He was, you know, a remarkable man. He was a very good surveyor of timber, a great talker and a great storyteller. But he's also one of these people, and we all know one of these people, where you can't tell if half the stories that they're telling are really true.
Gene Shepard was a prankster, a jokester, and he liked to brag, but he also liked to promote the area he was in.
Forestry has been the main source of income for the area. Perhaps lumberman Gene Shepard invents his story to revitalize local industries as the forests are being overharvested. Or perhaps Shepard sees the hodag as an opportunity to line his own pockets with a lucrative sideshow at the county fair. Whatever his motives, today he is hailed as a crafty visionary who replaced a failing economy with a tourist boom. Shepard could never have imagined that the legend of the monster he likely invented would transform his hometown in ways that no one could have predicted.
He came upon the idea of trying to pull a great joke, a big joke. He would always dabble in little ones, but he wanted to pull a giant one. And so he came up with this creature. And he designed this creature in his head. Then he had somebody actually build a creature for him out of cow horns and cow hides. And he got a very strong smelling liquid from the rendering plant in the area. And he ended up creating this monster and then showing it to people, telling them it was the real thing, that he had found it out in the woods, that it harkens back to prehistoric times, and it's been on the planet for many, many, many years and is very ferocious. The Smithsonian Institute actually sent people up here, and that is when Gene Shepard had to fess up that the whole thing was indeed a joke.
I think that absolutely Gene Shepard is probably, one of the first ambassadors that we've had for the Rhinelander community. He kind of put us on the map, and I don't think he probably ever intended to, and I think he probably thought this is gonna be hilarious when my friends hear this story about what I've just discovered, but he definitely has helped put Rhinelander on the map and has made a name for our community.
Rhinelander looks a lot like any other small town dotted throughout the American Midwest. But it doesn't take very long to realize that this one has its very own distinctive local character. It's everywhere you look. Hodag may be a myth or a hoax, but in the town of Rhinelander, the creature seems to tower over everything.
As you drive through the city of Rhinelander, you will see pictures of the hodag almost everywhere you go, to include little statues of the hodag itself.
The hodag has been associated with the name of Rhinelander for over 100 years now, and from my experience, it's sort of gone up and down in terms of its popularity. There was a period 15, 20 years ago where there was a controversy over whether they should paint the Hodag on one of the water towers, because, you know, we don't want to have this town become known for nothing but the Hodag. Since then, they've turned around, and, you know, the Hodag, there's a massive sculpture of it right in front of the Chamber of Commerce, and it's on the water towers, and people are proud of it. And it's absolutely a draw to the tourists, because it's the lore of a bygone era, of the lumberjack area that's, you know, only 100 years ago or so, that really was what this town and most of northern Wisconsin was built on.
People come here to Rhinelander, and when they come here to Rhinelander, one of the first things they do is stop at the Chamber of Commerce, and they take a picture of themselves in front of the giant Hodag, which is one of the main attractions for Rhinelander, and does bring people here because they want to see what is this myth of the Hodag, this story of the Hodag. How did it develop? Where was it kept? How was it captured? And of course, they need to have a picture of it.
The Hodag is really one of the things that Rhinelander is known for. A lot of people from Wisconsin, if you say, oh, I'm from Rhinelander or I live in Rhinelander, they'll say, oh, home of the Hodag. We know the Hodag. We've kind of embraced the idea we are the Rhinelander Hodags. That's our high school mascot. We have the Hodag Country Festival, which is one of the largest country festivals in the state. Bringing the Hodag into everything else kind of helps keep the legend going.
It's very hard to put a date when you're from here on when you heard about the Hodag. It's around you all the time. It's on every sign. It's on your tire dealership. It's on a restaurant. It's on everything. So it sort of begins when you begin. One of the big tourist attractions we have here, of course, is our Hodag Country Music Festival, where we bring in a lot of great country music stars. And then we've got other festivals that take place. Potato Fest, downtown events taking place, art fair. These are all things that take place outdoors because we have such a beautiful area to visit. And now we're going to go over to Pioneer Park, which contains the Logging Museum. And in the Logging Museum there are artifacts and there's equipment that was used in the early days of logging up here in northern Wisconsin, and specifically in the Rhinelander area. The county fair and the Hodag share a history, and here we are in 2013, and the Hodag is back at the county fair.
Welcome to the world-famous Hodag Exposition.
And it's a popular show at the county fair. So full circle, 110 years, 120 years later, the Hodag's back in town.
Who's here to see the Hodag? Yeah! All right.
Gene Shepherd's hoax has evolved into one of the local county fair's star attractions. It's at events like this that Gene Shepherd first displayed his fearsome beast to anyone willing to pay a dime for a peep. Jerry Scheidel has revived this tradition with his own slapstick reenactment for an appreciative audience outside the Rhinelander Museum.
When Jerry first came up with his sketch, or actually a reenactment of Gene Shepherd talking about the Hodag at the original Oneida County Fair, he performed that at the latest Oneida County Fair 1 year ago, and it was a smash hit.
If we were to look at a Hodag's heart, it would be black. That's how evil and sinister this creature is.
People just love the performance. They love the thrill of we're going to see a Hodag. Jerry is a great actor, and he really knows quite a bit about Gene Shepherd, and I think he's captured sort of the showmanship, the P.T. Barnum quality of Gene Shepherd. So, people loved the show. They were flocking. In fact, I think for their final performance of it, they had a couple hundred people that they didn't even fit into the tent where they were performing it. They had to open the flaps.
During the reenactment, we have the carnival barker who's out there trying to sell a particular product. In this case, Hodag Magic Elixir Water.
Madam, 1 bottle of Hodag Magic Elixir Water for your husband, and you'll have a new boost in the boudoir.
I'll take one of those.
And then we segue right into a little bit of a story about how the Hodag was discovered, and a little bit of a description of the Hodag in a humorous manner.
Jerry's show was very interesting. I've never really seen anything like that.
Just normal. Okay. A little help here.
And I don't know, it was kind of strange at points.
So I think people loved it because it was, a touch of old-time medicine show history. And to an extent, everybody just can't wait to go into the tent to see the Hodag.
On a carnival sideshow basis, if you've ever seen movies about the old circuses and the old fairs around the country, they always had the sideshows. They always had these unique things, the bearded ladies, the tall and the thin, and the skinny and the short, and all of these different sideshows that nobody believed for a minute. But they were always fun to listen to the barkers out there talking about it. And then it was always fun to go in, knowing full well you were probably going to get ripped off.
And our lunches. But there's Hodags here in town, too. Why, this morning someone took my eyeglasses. I think it was a Hodag.
The Rhinelander area is...
A few years ago, we used the Hodag hunt for a marketing campaign, and Chris Dries was one of our Hodag hunters, and we did television commercials based on the different places that you can find the Hodag. The Hodag is very well known for stealing golf balls, for example. And so we went hunting for the Hodag on the golf course. The Hodag also loves fresh fish, especially fish from the end of your fishing line. So if that big one ever gets away, it's not really that the big fish got away. The Hodag is, out for a swim and took it from you. Chris will definitely take you out Hodag hunting, and he's probably one of the expert Hodag hunters we have in the area. And the fun thing about it is if you can get a hold of him and he happens to be free, there will be no charge, and he will take you to those places in the woods, in the water, around town where the Hodag is best known to be spotted, and you have the best chance of finding him.
There's never been a confirmed sighting of the Hodag. Only, people rumors we have up in the north. So when I came north to northern Wisconsin, I was intrigued, as many other people have been. And I started doing some research. Camouflage is very good, apparently, as we can see by the Hodags we have locally. The greens and the dark shadows mimic our forest very well. He may be right behind you, and you would know. His scent is much stronger than any dog. It's reported. So when you look for the Hodag, you have to wash your hands very carefully, very, very carefully, and you have to take a breath mint, because they will smell your breath of a human well over a mile away. So that's probably one of the reasons no one actually has seen the Hodag. This is very good Hodag country. And we're also going to a swamp area, which most people don't like swamps. So the creatures that live in the swamps are somewhat protected from people who are looking for them. You have to look in unusual places for the Hodag. This was made, and the stick is broken as you can see, this was made by something. Whether it was a Hodag or dug by a bear, but it was dug for a reason. This is very important because they may have been here looking for roots.
I do not think we should do any actual hunt for the Hodag because, if you get out in the woods, there might be, there might be real animals out there. Maybe there'd be a bear or some mosquitoes or something like that. And so, I just think it would be more trouble than it's worth out there looking. But sometimes, if guests want to hunt down a T-shirt with a Hodag on it or a coffee cup, something like that, like a Hodag souvenir, I will tell them where to go because they do sell those at a few places in town. And they will go hunt those on down. And they are successful every time in that hunt.
I would say that there absolutely is a tie economically between the Hodag and tourism, because even for people who Rhinelander may not be their final destination, that means still they might grab lunch. They're still gonna try and take home a Hodag souvenir with them and say that they saw the Hodag and get their picture taken.
Gene Shepherd made a fair amount of money. There was one weekend where he actually, at a dime apiece, brought in $500. Now, $500, even today, it's a nice little chunk of change. Back then, it was quite a lot of money.
The Hodag you can find on keychains, bumper stickers.
I got a little snow globe with the Hodag on it.
A snow globe.
Anybody who has any kind of business acumen at all uses the Hodag to promote their business.
We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have, of course, we're in Wisconsin, so we have beer mugs, we have children's stories, so we have a whole line of merchandise called Happy the Hodag that was created by a woman who originally is from Rhinelander, and so Happy's the more children-friendly version of the Hodag. Window clings, bumper stickers, postcards, you name it. If we can put a Hodag on it, we will try.
Gene Shepherd discovered a very evil, sinister, ferocious animal that just stunk to high heaven. Over the years, in order to adapt and adopt a mascot to the current times, it had to be a little more friendly.
And the school, the high school, Rhinelander High School, made it the mascot. And that was the beginning of a lot of changes with the Hodag, because the Hodag was a real monster before that. You wanted to scare people with the Hodag. But after that, after the school adopted it, it became, well, it ate white bulldogs instead of human flesh. And only on Sundays did it eat the white bulldogs, so it was cleaned up a lot. And there's a story about how the black Hodag of the North became green. It's a simple story. The Rhinelander High School had green football uniforms. They repainted the Hodag. It was a terrible thing for the poor beast.
Growing up here in Rhinelander, the Hodag was always part of our family, and we are all very proud of it. It's grown and grown, the support for the Hodag. It's just been wonderful.
So it turned from black to green, and from ferocious and evil to a little more likable.
Hodag isn't the only bizarre hybrid creature that supposedly inhabits America's forests. The Jersey Devil is believed to be a cross between a kangaroo, a bat, and a goat. And the jackalope is half rabbit, half antelope. But the Hodag is the only creature that's been caught and only one of a handful to have captured the public's imagination and interest.
We do get asked quite frequently if people were gonna go out and if they were gonna look where they might take the kids and what kind of fun things they could do while looking for the Hodag.
We've been coming up here for years trying to find one.
Yeah. Yes, we have not seen it. We've been hunting for them.
Yeah. I've also actually seen the Hodag used as a parental tool in that they will tell their children, you know, you might want to watch out and behave and stay in the tent if they're camping tonight because the Hodag could potentially, you know, sneak out of the woods or climb out of the lake. And it's always great when kids' eyes get really large and they hear just what might happen when they don't listen to mom and dad.
Whether anyone still believes or not, both locals and visitors all agree that the strange legend of the Hodag has left an indelible mark on this little city in the heart of Wisconsin. A mark that has put Rhinelander on the map of extraordinary places.
People wonder how it is that the Hodag is alive after over 100 years. Well, it's got several reasons. The main one being it is a unique creature. There are no other mascots that look like the Hodag, that exist like the Hodag. There are no other creatures that have a myth and a story built up around them over time. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger. USA Today had a contest where you could vote online. In Wisconsin, we were considered the most unique mascot in the state.
So it's an absolutely wonderful bit of lore and a great name of a creature that a lot of people have tapped into and have carried on with the myth.
The mystery of the Hodag is something that is just a lot of fun, and it's something unique, and it's not something that anybody else can say that they have. And so whether you believe or don't believe, it's a little bit like Santa Claus. I think, you know, kids will always believe in Santa Claus until they're told differently. So we treat the Hodag sort of the same way.
The Hodag like gives us more pep. I mean, this makes the city cooler. I don't know. I'm trying to explain this.
It brings recognition to the town of Rhinelander.
Plus, then we can make T-shirts about it and sell it.
I think it's a great initial hook. I think people really kind of get into it. I think that they come here, they enjoy it here, they have a great time, and the fact that there is no Hodag at the end of the day really doesn't matter.
It's as real as you want to make it, and kids love it. I mean, we have storybooks about it. They did a Scooby-Doo episode about it. So in Rhinelander hearts, it is real. It's real to all of us.
Over the years, because we have mellowed the image of the Hodag down so nicely, it's just a more lovable, more mellow, more interesting creature to adopt and to like. And so people they've taken to it.
If you want to believe, you'll believe, ultimately. It's fun. It's the whole mystique behind the creature, the Hodag, the lore of the 19th century lumbermen, and if you want to believe, you're going to believe it.